The motion passes unanimous, 3-0. Commissioner Long and Commissioner Mazon are running late because of work. Okay, so Mr. Dallas, you have the floor. Take it away.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. As the Mayor mentioned, tonight is the kickoff for our budget workshop. I have broken this presentation up into two parts. The first part is kind of our general kickoff part, and then the second part is a little bit of discussion about the property tax referendum that's on the ballot in November and the potential impacts, what it'll mean for Newberry. So, as always, if you have any questions, please stop me in the middle of the PowerPoint. I'd love for this to be more conversational than me just droning on numbers at you for an hour. So as always, we'll start off with commission considerations. These are some of the things we're going to ask you to consider during your budget process this year. As always, revenue diversification, millage rate. As a reminder, your current millage rate is 5.8800 mils. The state budget process has a large impact on your budget. As the commission's aware, we do receive quite a bit of revenue entitlements from the state, either through sales tax, revenue sharing, communication service taxes, all sorts of different taxes that are provided to us by the state. The governor did not sign the budget until about midday on Monday, which means that the state has not had an opportunity to review what's been adopted and provide us those estimates. The current information from the state is they're going to start looking at that on July 10th. So hopefully by the end of July, we'll have more information on our revenue estimates. What that'll mean for the commission is we're probably going to flip our normal process. As the commission's aware, we usually do a budget kickoff, then we do governmental funds, then we do utilities, and then we do a wrap-up. Because we're waiting on the information from the state, our next budget workshop will primarily probably focus on the utilities, since that's fully within your control and we don't need to wait on state revenues. Fire assessment rate, as always, we'll discuss what the commission wants to do for setting the fire assessment rates and your different options for fire assessment. At your second meeting in July, you will be adopting your max for the fire assessment. So be thinking about what you want to set the maximum at. Road maintenance assessment, we'll talk about that just briefly. We are going to have a presentation on that coming up. But as the commission will remember, about a year ago, we brought in a presentation on implementing a road assessment. It'd be very similar to your fire assessment, but that would be dedicated funding to repair and maintain roads throughout the community, separate from impact fees. As the commission knows, the impact fees can only be used to implement new capacity building projects where the road maintenance assessment could maintain our existing infrastructure. So we'll talk a little bit about that, and like I said, we'll have a presentation from the consulting firm a little bit later this summer. Good news on insurance rates. As the commission may be aware, the legislature passed a bill this year to increase our sovereign immunity caps. Sovereign immunity caps what we can be liable for in a variety of different litigations. The legislature increased those caps, which is a direct correlation to increasing our insurance rates. Our insurance company had told us to expect between 10 to 20% increases in our insurance rates with these new caps. That would have been about $77,000 a year in increased insurance cost. Thankfully, yesterday afternoon, the governor did veto that bill, so our sovereign immunity caps remain where they are, which means our insurance rates are not going to increase 10 to 20% as expected. As always, we'll talk about our personnel expenses, staffing, market benchmarking, minimum wage amendment, and then our capital improvement program. So as you may be aware, Newberry's population is increasing. As of April of 2025, our estimated population is right over 9,500. We estimate that today it's probably closer to 9,800, maybe even pushing on 10,000. All of our revenue estimates that the state provides us are all based off of a year ago data. So we use their data from April of last year. So we're at 9,503 as of today. So quick recap on your general fund, where your money comes from. Primarily, your revenue for your general fund is through property taxes, just shy of $5 million, about 1/3 of your total general fund budget. Your next highest revenue sources are going to be your charges for services and permits, fees, and assessments. Charges for services primarily driven by your solid waste charges, but that also includes recreation fees, just all the other fees we charge for our services we provide to the public. And then your permits, fees, and assessments includes your fire assessment, as well as building permits and those sorts of things. Intergovernmental revenue, that's the part I was talking about that comes from the state. So it's about 11% of our budget, $1.6 million. So it's not a huge part of our budget, but it definitely makes a big enough impact that we need to wait for the state to tell us what that's going to be. In terms of where all the money goes, primarily the majority of your general fund goes into public safety. So that's your law enforcement contract, fire department, building department, and codes enforcement, followed by your next largest area is streets and roads and public infrastructure. And then, as you can see, the rest of the split out there. In utilities, I don't have a where does the money come from in utilities because it'd be like 99% charges for services because our utilities are funded by our rates that we charge to our customers to fund our utility operations. As I've mentioned to the commission in a couple of our discussions, all of our budget graphs are a little skewed in utilities because of the wastewater treatment plant. So our current budget for wastewater is $76 million. $70 million of that is the wastewater treatment plant. So if you back that out, wastewater is still a huge expense this year. I'm sorry, I actually don't have that slide. If you back that out, wastewater is about the same as water in terms of our spending, with your electric department being the largest portion of your utilities. In terms of how we spend the money, the vast majority of it goes into capital improvements. That's, improvement of roads, lift stations, water mains, buildings, parks, all those sorts of capital improvements we do every year. About half of our budget, excluding the wastewater plant this year, is going into capital assets. The next largest portion is going to be operations. That's kind of the catch-all for everything else that doesn't fit into one of the other categories, but that's all your contract services. That is, I broke out contract service, take that back. But that's your utilities. That's the cost of doing business on a day-to-day basis. We have about 8% goes to contract services. Those are all of our legally required contracts that we've entered into to pay for a variety of services. And then wages and benefits are about 17% of your budget. Millage. So earlier today, we actually received
when you say legally required, is that?
Well, you've entered into a contract that says you're going to pay these.
Oh, okay.
Some of them
Okay.
are
It's not-
legally required.
It's not something that the state demands that we do, or?
A few of them are, but most of them are not. No, there's things that you've entered into a contract that say, we're going to do this thing. Millage. So earlier this afternoon, the property appraiser certified to us our 2026 gross taxable value of $966 million. That includes just shy of $53 million of new construction value. A large portion of that is some of the commercial, like for example, Publix wasn't on our tax roll last year. It is on our tax rolls this year. It represents a 12% increase from our taxable value last year of $862. Our rollback rate is 5.5515 mils. And then as a reminder, the Save Our Homes cap remains at 3% this year since the CPI is higher than the Save Our Homes. Chart on the bottom, as always, gives the commission some information if you wanted to adjust your millage, either up or down, what the impact would be on revenues to the city. For example, if you increase your millage by 1 mil, it would generate an additional $917,000 in revenue to the general fund, and have an increase of $220 on your average homesteaded homeowner in the city. Save Our Homes, as a reminder, there is currently a constitutional amendment that was adopted by the voters back in 1995 called Save Our Homes, which limits the annual increase in assessed value on homestead property to 3% or the CPI, whichever is lower. So you cannot have the value of your property, your homestead property, increase in taxable value by more than 3% a year, not including if you do an addition, a pool, something like that, that will go on top of it. We in the city of Newberry currently have about $50 million that is excluded from our taxable value through Save Our Homes. So if that $50 million was back on the tax roll, we would generate an additional $300,000 a year, or about a $0.25 mil, a little more than a $0.25 mil, $0.33 mil. So you could either use that revenue to fund your operations or reduce your millage at the same and generate the same taxes. As a reminder, every year you get your tax bill. And that tax bill is not just the city of Newberry. It includes a variety of different taxing authorities. So for every dollar you pay in your property taxes, 35 cents of that goes to the Alachua County. So that funds your county-wide operations, constitutional officers, sheriff's department, supervisor of elections, the court system, the jail, all those sorts of things. 29 cents goes to the school district for the public school system. 27 cents comes to the city of Newberry. And then 5 cents, 2 cents, and 2 cents go to the library district, the children's trust, and the water management district. Key point here is oftentimes we hear back from our residents of, I'm paying you X many dollars a year. It's like, well, you are paying that much in taxes, but the city is only getting a little more than a quarter of that. As a reminder to the commission, a little bit of a kudos. City of Newberry has one of the lowest millage rates in the county, especially when you consider the level of service that the city provides compared to some of our peer cities. So the only city that is lower than us in terms of millage rate is the city of Micanopy. The cities of Alachua, High Spring, Gainesville are all higher than us. Gainesville and High Springs, almost a mill or more than a mill higher than us in their millage rates. Alachua almost half-ish of a mill higher than us. So kudos to the commission for continuing to keep our millage rate low and providing a high level of service. On that same note, our electric rates are middle of the pack, a little higher than the middle of the pack, but generally pretty close to the middle in terms of rates amongst other municipal electric providers and IOUs or investor-owned utilities like Duke Energy and FPL. One thing this chart doesn't show, which I wish it did, was the co-ops of like Clay Electric and Central Florida Electric. They are also higher than us. Central Florida Electric's a little bit closer to our rates, but they are still higher than us. And Clay Electric is a pretty good amount higher than us. On your water rates, again, we're middle high of the pack. We're a little bit higher than Alachua and Gainesville, pretty substantially lower than High Springs on residential rates. The commission many years ago adopted a conservation rate in your irrigation rates, which is intended to encourage people through rates to conserve water on irrigation, which is why you have a higher irrigation rate than some of your counterparts. But by and large, we're pretty in the pack there locally. On the statewide average, we are lower than the state. So the statewide average as of 2024 for water was $46. Our average in 2026 was $40.69. So even if you take into account escalation, cost of CPI on the $46, we're probably substantially lower than the statewide average on water charges. Yes, sir.
Going further, I know I'm gonna beat a dead horse. I know Jamie's sitting there, all the utilities are here. I've asked this before. We capture no money from the people in these subdivisions because they go in there and put these wells in. They can put a well in, but yet we're limited on Swanee River Water Management, correct me if I'm wrong, to a certain amount of water. Correct, Jamie? And the last time we talked, we couldn't get that up. We're held to a certain amount. Is that daily or weekly or monthly? Because here's what I'm asking while we're sitting here. I would like to, and I don't see why we can't do it. There's got to be a way to let the people of this city, the meter is, I understand the meter cost, but we could capture everybody that wants to irrigate instead of letting them put a well in and they irrigate whatever the heck they want as much as they want, and Swanee River don't care about that. So we're being held to something that they can do that they ain't even worried about. So
Your current withdrawal permit allows you to withdraw an annual average of about 828,000 gallons per day. That's an annual average. With that means some days you're pulling over 1 million, some you're down around 400,000. Currently running about 808,000 gallons on an annual average actual. So our permit is due to be renewed. We tried to increase that allocation the last time. They told us that they wouldn't look at it until we had the wastewater plant and some potential offsets. Our pumping capacity is over 3 million gallons per day. When we spoke to the Water Management District last time about the irrigation wells, they said they would be proud for the city commission to put in a local ordinance that prohibited the installation of irrigation wells in residential locations.
they'll up ours so we can let the people water yards at $2 a gallon instead of $8 a gallon.
And they would entertain us upping our allocation, But their theory is that if somebody applies for a well, they have to grant the permit, they can't restrict it. They wanted the city commission to be the one to restrict the ability to put the irrigation wells in at private residences.
So they're holding, it sounds to me like nobody wants to make that command decision is what this is all about. Didn't Gainesville just get their permit up?
I'm not sure.
Somebody just got it around here in one of our things. So all their water goes up. I don't understand why we gotta wait. I mean, it sounds to me it's just typical government. Just keep you beat down a little bit until you need me, and then you come see me and give me a little something.
Well, I don't think they wanted to take the pressure from,
I understand, but do you think it's possible to let people irrigate on a low charge instead of putting it in that high charge? That's where I'm asking. We can capture every drop that goes out at some amount of money that helps us instead of letting them put in a well and we don't capture nothing.
well, we can go back and revisit the conservation rates, and if the commission desires to set a different or lower rate per thousand on irrigation, you have the authority to do so.
That's something that you can separate. It's a meter thing though. There's a meter thing, correct, Jamie?
We meter irrigation separately than,
There's a substantial,
and you don't pay wastewater charges on what goes to your irrigation meter, where you do pay it on what goes to your residential.
but anyway, thank you. We'll get it up. Not this year.
March of 2028 is when our permit's renewed.
March of 2028 is when our permit is renewed.
I think we need the commission calling Swanee River Water Management instead of them calling Larry, call Big Larry, and let's get this changed.
I'm just happy to see Jamie not walking around with a cane.
Oh, he's got it.
Don't come to the
He
house.
hit me with it earlier. but-
You go take a shower with it here. That's not a
Okay,
bad
all right.
idea.
I appreciate that. I just wanted, cause that cost right there, while we're here, we'll, discuss that. Thank you.
Moving into wastewater, again, your wastewater rates are middle of the road to middle high, a little bit higher than Alachua, a little bit higher than Gainesville, substantially less than City of High Springs. Part of that has to do with as the commission's very well aware of our cycle in a regulatory permit. We're having to meet higher regulations than some of our peers are, but we anticipate when their permits come up for renewal, they will have to meet these same regulations that we're currently having to pay for. From a statewide average, we're right on with the statewide average. Again, in 2024, the statewide average was $71.69. In 2026, ours was just shy of $74. So again, if you take inflation into account, we're right on the money. And I should have mentioned this earlier, all this data in terms of statewide average comes from a report that is put together by an independent water engineering company that does this every 2 years. So it's not Dallas making these numbers up for you. Personnel. Florida retirement system increases have been fairly minimal. I had maybe on there because at the time I made this PowerPoint, the governor had not signed the budget yet. He has signed the budget, and then subsequently he signed the FRS increases. One caveat on that is while they are minimal in aggregate to the city, most of the FRS contributions went down. However, the fire departments went up fairly substantially. The decreases in the other parts of the city basically offset what happened in the fire department. The FRS rates are set by the state of Florida. So, health insurance increases. We got an original health insurance increase back from our carrier at a little less than 12%, 11% some change. We negotiated it down to 9.5%. Still not thrilled about a 9.5% increase, but we are kind of at the whim of our health insurance provider. So that is about a $100,000 increase a year in our health insurance premiums.
Has that been looked into as far as any other providers available?
We haven't shopped it this year. We shop it about every other year. In the past, our current provider has been fairly good to us. The feedback we've gotten on switching healthcare providers is that from our employee base, they do not want to switch to a different provider because there's less options that provide a worse coverage for them. So our only other options are really United or Aetna. and the coverage in our area for United and Aetna are not the same as Blue Cross Blue Shield. So we did shop it 2 years ago, and the other providers came in at worse plans for about the same amount of money. But we do look at it every year. We shop Blue Cross Blue Shield. Compensation, following the commission's direction from years past, we are planning to provide up to 4% merit raises for employees based off of performance evaluations and a 2.5% COLA. The fire department does have their union step-in plan, so it'll be separate from the merit plan. This is the last year of the minimum wage amendment step-in. So as the commission will recall, 6 or so years ago, the state of Florida passed a minimum wage amendment to raise our minimum wage up to $15 an hour, $1 a year. So this year, the minimum wage will go up to the $15 an hour. Following this, every year in September, it'll be increased by the cost of living as determined by the state. So we will be implementing our $15 an hour minimum wage for all of our employees that are at the minimum wage.
Dallas, we did a big, correct me if I'm wrong on this one. We did a big raise across the board for our employees here. Was it last year or the year before? 2 years ago? We brought everybody up. Is anybody making $15 an hour?
None of our full-time staff.
That's what I
makes
thought. Nobody
it's
down
our-
at that, I mean, we really tried hard from this standpoint to give everybody pretty good money.
Yeah, so the only staff we have that makes minimum wage are the part-time recreation
Okay. Okay.
people. But when we raise the minimum wage, it does have that starting pay for all staff, it has a trickle effect through the organization to
Yes,
avoid
sir.
compression.
Okay.
So, but no, sir, we don't have any full-time staff that's making,
Ground down at utilities or nobody down there.
no. I would say none of our full-time staff starts below $20 an hour. Long-term staffing plan. So as you know, we prepare a 10-year staffing plan where each of the departments looks at their staffing needs for the next decade based off of growth, based off of service levels, so we can project out what we're going to need to keep our service levels high. We look at the population increases, service demands, benchmarking. There are several positions that are being requested to be added into the position control plan this year. We'll talk about that more in the next 2 workshops. And then other benefits, of course, the city provides other benefits to our employees, dental insurance, vision insurance, those sorts of things. Thankfully, all of our supplemental benefits came in at a rate freeze, meaning there is no increase on those rates, pay the same as we did last year, which is great. Operating, same thing I've been saying to the commission for the last couple of years, inflation remains high. We continue to fight increases in costs across the organization. Everything costs more. As I mentioned earlier, we were concerned about insurance rates being increased, that 10 to 20%, but thankfully the governor did veto that sovereign immunity bill. By and large, the budget that we'll be presenting to you at the next 2 workshops will be a continuation budget, and there are not any new programs or services planned to be offered. Mostly just continuation of price index increases, population increases, increases related to our contracts. As an example of some of the utility costs that we're continuing to see, in 2019, the difference from 2019 to 2025 in terms of some of the utility infrastructure we're purchasing, transformers are up nearly 175% in cost from the last 6 years. Insulators are up close to 160%. Poles and wire are 60% higher. I stole this from CFEC, so you can ignore the average member bill. Point being is buying the same stuff that we bought several years ago is costing us nearly double on some of these things. So it's really putting a pressure on the rest of the budget. This is a slide I stole.
Hey, Dallas,
Yes, sir.
on a couple of those things, do you actually have the actual dollar figures versus the percentage?
I can get them for you. Yes, sir.
Jamie, do you know
Do you have
by
any
off the top of your head
examples
by
off the top of your
chance? Okay,
I know we've looked at it, so I know.
put that on your evaluation, Jamie.
He's a wastewater guy. You need to talk to the boss over there. He better have it. He's good right now.
Here's just another example. This is actually, you've seen this before, is in the county manager's presentation, but this one does have some real dollars to the mayor's point. Some of the ones that I think are most applicable to us is the difference from 2021 to 2026 in milling and resurfacing. Went from, on average, $240,000 to $446,000. Fire trucks, although I don't know where they're getting a fire truck at $500,000 in 2022, but went from $500,000 to $900,000. You know, just don't want to beat a dead horse, but you know, the cost of doing business continues to outpace our increases in revenue and put additional pressure on the rest of the organization. In terms of capital improvement, as you've heard the manager say for the last year or so, next year is going to be a really busy year for the city. The next several years are going to be really busy years for the city. This is not a full list of the capital improvements that we have underway or will have underway next year. These are the larger ones. But just some of the bigger projects we have next year, we have the Florida Jobs Growth Grant, our Water Resiliency Grant, the wastewater treatment plant construction, water tower construction, Courtland at East End, multipurpose fields, the Twin Pairs project, which includes moving of water, wastewater, and electric systems, and the second feed. Those projects total about $120 million in capital outlay in and of themselves. That does not include the normal stuff we do every year, lift station replacements, road repairs, all of our normal capital outlay projects. So just want the commission to understand that you guys are putting a lot of money into your capital assets. A lot of this is either grant or loan funded or coming out of your reserves. But it is going to be a busy couple of years for the city of Newberry.
Mr. Mayor, could I, before Dallas moves on for this slide, I just want to make a point that Dallas he's already making. But most of us here are old Newberry, right? We grew up in the 70s and the 80s, even the 90s. Newberry has been a maintained community, right? We built our wastewater in the 70s. We've been maintaining it. We had a little addition to it 10 years ago, 12 years ago, somewhere in there, right? That's not the Newberry that we're in today, right? All of these are huge project management lifts, right? Yeah, most of these have grant strings attached to it that require reporting, data. So I know because I react this way too, right? I remember Newberry as just sort of a sleepy, we're just sort of going along, right? That's not what's happening in Newberry at this point in time. Each one of these projects is intensely complex. We're getting funding from different revenue sources. Every one of those government entities wants hundreds of pages of data and reports on quarterly reviews, right? We love grants. We live off of grants, but each of those grants take an hour or two a day of just doing the reporting and making sure that we're doing everything right, and they're not going to claw it back and take it away from us and make us repay it back. So, and this isn't a complete list, right? So I want to make sure that we're not making the mistake that I make in my head and heart when I think, wow, you know what? We always did it in this way before, right? It ain't the way we did it in the 80s anymore, right? The daily operations of Newberry are complex and growing more complex, but these types of projects are very exciting. I love every single one of them, but every single one of them is a massive lift in and of itself. And with two-way pairs, the wastewater treatment, the second feed, the water towers, you know, and then all the fun stuff like adding on to recreation parks and gyms and all that kind of stuff. It's great. It's very exciting, but each one of these represents a complex web of daily chores that have to be done all the time and operate the city at the same time. So I just want to take that moment because I know that's how I react, because I grew up in Newberry when it was just kind of, we just go out and we fix a pipe here and there, and pretty much it's just maintaining and we're moving along. We're not maintaining now. We're in build mode now. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
On that point, just a few hours ago, we did receive notice that we did receive another grant. We got $560,000 to move a lift station, so I'll add that to the list.
Mr. Manager, as far as capital outlay is concerned, I want to be sure we separate what we need from what we want. That's the main thing I'm concerned about is we're not spending money on wants, especially with not knowing what the property taxes is gonna do or how we're gonna actually finance the city after that passes, which I'm pretty sure it will.
I want a splash park.
You won't. You gonna get a sprinkler.
Mr. Mayor, that concludes the first part of my presentation, so I can stop here if there's any questions on the budget kickoff part before we move into the second part, or?
I'm good. Any questions from the dais?
So,
I'll have some, but we'll do it on
I was just
the
kinda,
week.
I was just kinda curious how come Alachua's electric rates are so much lower than ours?
Alachua is,
They have a wholesale contract with GRU.
they actually have a wholesale contract with FMPA, but they got a sweetheart deal. It's a short contract because at the time FMPA had excess energy. However, their contract is only good for another year or two, at which point they'll be back in the market and they'll pay higher rates than we're currently paying. They're getting a shorthand good benefit, and then in the long run, they'll end up paying more.
Thank you for the clarification.
All right, so the next part is going to be based off of property tax and the potential impacts the property tax referendum could have on Newberry. So again, please stop me at any time if you have any questions. So as a reminder, the property taxes are set through a millage rate. The millage rate is a tax applied to every $1,000 of taxable value. So if you have a millage rate of 5.2, that means you're paying $5.20 for every $1,000 of taxable value you have. So in our city, our millage rate is 5.88. So for every $1,000 of assessed taxable value your home has, you pay $5.88. And of course, that is set by the city commission every year through a public budget process. So this graph I show you every year, it's where our property taxable values have been over the last decade or so. The orange arrow indicates where our taxable values will be should the property tax referendum pass. So as you can see, essentially it'll put us back to what we were collecting in 2021. So we've kind of wiped most of the increases in our values off for the last 4 or 5 years.
Mr. Mayor, not for the commission's benefit, but for folks here and folks watching at home. At this point, that property tax measure is on the ballot. So I just want to let folks know, we can't, either staff or the elected officials cannot say something in favor or against it at this point. So you can ask all the questions, we can answer any factual questions, right? But now that we are getting into this, I know that's in the back of everybody's mind, but you as elected officials fall under the same legal constraint that we do, right? Once it's on the ballot, we can answer factual questions, but we cannot say, yay, 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 go vote for it. We cannot say, nay, 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 don't go vote for it. We have to let people objectively make their own decisions. So just want to make sure we say that into the record before we get into it.
Does the Florida League of Cities can?
That's a Nicole
Florida League
question.
of Cities can because they're not publicly funded. They're not a public entity.
They take our tax dollars. Or they take money from us.
By choice.
So they're kind of our,
By choice.
Huh?
By choice.
yeah.
They're not publicly.
They're not a public.
Adherent,
They're
I
not a
guess.
public organization.
Yeah.
As a reminder, moving through this conversation, the city of Newberry has a low property tax rate, at least compared to our neighbors throughout the county. Some history on the proposed referendum. In general, the proposed referendum will increase your homestead exemption to $150,000 in 2027, and then to $250,000 in 2028. It reduces the cap on non-homesteaded properties, which is non-homestead residential, but also commercial non-residential properties, from a 10% cap to a 5% cap. And if it takes effect, it'll take effect on January 1st of 2027, and it does require 60% approval by the voters. For Newberry, based off of our current 2026 numbers, so the budget you're currently in, not the one we're working on for the future, be about $2 million decrease in our property tax revenues once we hit the full $250,000 exemption. That's about 40% of your property tax revenue, which would be reduced, which is 15% of the general fund and 22% of your unrestricted revenue. Move on. So a little bit of history. It was originally a priority of Governor DeSantis. It was passed by the legislature early last month. As I mentioned, it'll be on the November ballot for approval by the voters. For approval, it does need 60% of the vote. And as I just mentioned, takes effect in January. Replaces the existing $50,000 homestead with the $150,000, increases it to $250,000. The law says that there is a pathway to full exemption through the future general law, but it doesn't clarify what that means. It's left to the legislature. It also does impose a 5-year waiting period for new residents to the state to get the full $250,000. So they'll have, if a new person moves to Florida, files for homestead, they'll get the $50,000 homestead exemption, and then they have to wait 5 years before they get the full $250,000. So the changes to homestead exemptions.
Excuse me, Dallas. I was with Representative Toby Oberdor over the weekend, and one thing that he pointed out to me that I didn't realize that would be important for the public and the diocese, my kids have grown up in Florida all their lives. If they do not purchase a home, even themselves, by January 1st, 2027, they will have to wait another 5 years to get the exemption, even though they've lived in Florida all their life. So I thought that was an interesting
little-
wrinkle.
So it's 5 years for all new homeowners.
Yeah, for everybody.
Interesting.
Better get some homes being built. This will be a flood to the market.
The changes to the homestead exemption only applies to non-school taxing authorities, so cities, counties, special districts. The homestead exemption changes do not apply to the schools portion of property taxes. So the school portion on your current tax bill will stay the same. There will be no change in the exemptions in the taxes that fund the school system. It also does not impact non-ad valorem assessment, such as your fire assessment, solid waste assessments, et cetera. And then, as I mentioned, on non-homestead properties, which is, again, everything that isn't a homestead residence, there's a decrease on the cap from a 10% increase annually to up to 5%. The law also limits what the commission can spend property taxes on. It limits the use to public safety, education, schools, infrastructure, natural resources, bonds and debts, retirement benefits for local government employees. And then there's this catch-all language at the end that says, and also anything else that's not illegal and the commission decides it wants to. So I don't quite understand what the point of listing all these things out when you have this caveat that says you can spend them on what the commission says it wants to, but it is in there. So the impact that it'll have on Newberry, the first year it takes effect, which would be fiscal year 2028. So we're not looking at this for next fiscal year. This would all be for the following fiscal year in 2028. The exemption would go to $150,000. Again, based off of our current values, we'd lose about $215 million of assessable value, which would be about $1.25 million off of our current budget. And then the following year, when it goes to the 250, we get to about 40% of our taxable value reduced, $340 million, and $2 million in revenues lost.
But the caveat, Dallas, is if we're building 200 houses a year, they're not included. They go to the 50% after the,
No, it depends on who the owner is. So if the owner has lived in Florida and had homestead, they bring that homestead with them. If they've never owned a home before, then they would have the 5-year waiting
Yeah,
period.
they'll
Or
have
if
to
they're
wait
new
the
to
5
Florida,
even
they have the
if
5 year.
even if they build the new one like you were just talking about?
Yeah, if you, today, if you go build a new house, you take your homestead with you to your new house.
Portability.
Correct.
Well, that sounds like some craziness from y'all guys.
That's a good thing. 'Cause
Yeah,
wanna
if you moved
build-
houses, you'd want to take your
Yeah.
homestead with you.
So it's only in new people that come,
You
that
have to
do,
be-
that not currently live here.
Yeah, you have to
In
essentially
Florida.
be a new homeowner in Florida. Like
Okay.
never owned a house in Florida before.
Well, we still get a lot of that. We still get new.
Well, I think,
So I wonder what the real, my point is, even if that's the way it is, but wonder what the real value drop will be, because some of this will be negated by new move-ins.
Yeah, there's a lot of what ifs. The
Yeah.
other side of it is,
Not be as bad as
the other side of it is, the city continues to build commercial.
that was my.
That's what I
Commercial
was
is going
just
to
fixing to
help
say.
offset
Focus on
this.
the commercial.
commercial don't apply.
Correct.
Yeah,
Commercial
we're
doesn't
in-
apply. Renters doesn't apply.
We're in kind of a unique situation because we have a lot of commercial that's coming online. where other governments just don't have any of that. They're at the beginning of the line. We're like on turn 4 on a lot of this stuff, turn dirt. So
We also have a little bit
we
of
have a little
cushion.
bit of a buffer. Like you said, it may not feel as bad. So, yeah.
We also have a cushion, thanks to Argos, which is the largest taxpayer in the county. Quikrete, Florida Rock, Vulcan, whichever name they're going by this week. But their taxes will not change based on this, which is a cushion for the city. We're in a lot better place than some of our neighbors from that. The reduction in the non-homestead cap from the 10 to 5%, we don't have a way of projecting what that is because that percentage changes every year, but obviously it will reduce your future revenues. As I mentioned earlier, based off these numbers, about a 40% loss of your total property taxes, which is 15% of your general fund, 22% of your unrestricted revenues. As an example of what that'll look like for a homestead property and non-homestead property, currently in the city of Newberry, most of our average house is about $300,000 value with a $50,000 homestead exemption, so $250,000 taxable value. Your current millage rate's 5.88. So they pay about $1,500 a year in city property taxes. Under this new plan, the exemptions and the taxable value pretty much flip, which would result in them paying about $300 a year in city property taxes. For a non-homestead property, there aren't any exemptions, so they pay about $1,800 a year in city property taxes, and under the new proposal, they would pay $1,800 on property taxes because they don't receive homestead exemption. So at the city manager's direction, all of your staff has been looking at the impacts that this can have across the city, and we're working to prepare so that we're ready if this happens. So we've been looking at a couple of different scenarios. As an example, this first one is a straight across the board cut to all general fund departments of 15.11%, which is the amount of general fund revenue that we would lose. So this is based off your 2026 current year budget, what their current year budget is, what their required cut to their budget would be based off that across the board cut. So as you can see, where the impacts are going to be across various different departments. This doesn't take into account things that we still have to pay for, doesn't account for new revenue streams. It is less grant revenue, but like something to consider is like debt service, for example. We pay $483,000 a year in debt service out of the general fund. 15% cut to that is $76,000, but we realistically cannot cut our debt service fund budget. We have to make those debt service payments, so that $76,000 will need to be absorbed throughout the rest of the city. The other way that we've been looking at it is net of departmental revenues. As the commission is aware, many departments have revenues that they bring in, either that are completely restricted to them, such as the fire assessment. Fire assessment can only go to the fund of the fire department, or that the commission has said, we want these funds to go to pay for this service. So this methodology takes those revenues and nets them out of their budget to get to the part of their budget that is funded through what is often called the general fund, but property tax is all of our unrestricted revenues. So a great example of this is in the previous slide. The building department at their 15% cut would need to cut $118,000 out of their budget. But as the commission is aware, the building department is primarily funded through building permits to fund their services. So only $50,000 a year comes out of unrestricted revenues to fund the building department. So if you give them credit for their building permit fees, they only have to cut 1.5% or $11,000 out of their budget. So essentially, it's shifting the cuts to the departments that don't have dedicated revenue sources. Fire department's another great example. In the previous slide, they needed to cut $430,000, but if you give them credit for the fire assessment and fire services contract and those sorts of things, brings their cut down to only $256,000. Any questions on these two slides?
Why is code enforcement? It's at 225,000 a year, or 224,000, but the building department's only at 51,000.
Well, so this slide again is net of revenue. So the code enforcement department doesn't have a lot of revenues, where the building department has lots.
Yeah, so it's paying for it almost.
Correct. So the building department budget is actually $750,000 total.
Ooh.
but they bring in $700,000 in building permit fees.
Okay, I got it.
So yeah, the net budget on this slide is after you take into account revenues.
Okay.
The only revenue the code enforcement department really brings in is some fines every now and then.
But Mr. Mayor, that does beg the question, not for tonight, because we're staying on track, but when we go back to the question of, are people paying for the service that they're getting, right? We have approached code enforcement with kid gloves. We try to work with people. We forgive the fees that are assessed. I think we have to question that, right? Code enforcement does cost. I get lots and lots of requests for code enforcement. You guys get lots and lots of requests for code enforcement, to the point that people get very frustrated when it takes some time to get people in line and in compliance, right? So I think it's one of those sort of philosophical questions that we're going to have to address at some point in time. Again, I'm not asking to launch down that rabbit hole tonight, right? But at this point in time, we bend over backwards with people to get them into compliance before we even get to where we're assessing fines and fees and charges and those kinds of things, right? But we are paying for it to have this service as a community. So it's just something to think about in the back of your minds as we figure out how we move in to these different realities.
The only other comment I want to make on this slide is this budget is net budget all inclusive. So that's personnel, operating, capital. These required cuts in many of the cases in these departments are 70 to over 100% of their operating budgets. So the only other place we're going to have to cut is into personnel. And we'll talk about that a little bit in a moment. But an example is in the fire department. Their operating budget's about $400,000. It's just not realistic for us to cut $256,000 out of an operating budget and leave only $150,000 left to operate the department. Another example, in finance and administration budget, my operating budget is not $170,000. That's 120% of what my operations department is. Most of the salaries in finance administration, or most of the costs in finance administration is salaries. So just the point being that it's not as easy just cutting light bills and training and those sorts of things.
Dallas, can't we get the Rio fixed up though and get the fire department back on the Rio?
Absolutely.
Instead of that big beautiful truck we got, we
We
can
can
park
sell
that
that
thing,
truck.
let them use the Rio?
Absolutely.
Actively-
Chief,
We're actively looking at that. I just
ISO
also
rating
want-
might go up, huh?
I want to remind the commission, Newberry has 90 full-time employees for a city of 9,300, somewhere in there right now. Williston has 120 full-time employees for a city of 3,500, right? So, and I'll stack us up to just about every city around about how lean we're running. So when we talk about taking people out, what we're talking about is taking the level of service out. Instead of having somebody to grade the road every 2 weeks, we're looking at every 6 weeks, right? Instead of being able to say, hey, somebody just dumped 2 loads of trash on my road, can somebody come out and clean it up? The answer is, I don't have anybody to send, right? So, I know there's a lot of community conversation about those kinds of services, but as I say every budget year, I spend 11 months of the year having people ask me for a higher level of service, and I spend 1 month of the year when we're figuring out how much that costs, right, fighting about how much it costs to provide that level of service that people are demanding the other 10, 11 months out of the year. So when we talk about the people, we are talking about how can we, these are Parks and Rec programmers. These are the people that are responding. We're having to cut something. There just won't be a body left to go do these things, right?
So, Mr. Manager, with the 120 people in Williston, we don't know how they're actually distributed. We don't know what their actual salaries are either, and that they might be working with 120 people under the same salary budget that we are with what we have. So, you got heads, but are they being paid the same, or are they doing the same job, or?
I mean, we have done salary peer comparisons, and we're right in the peer market, right? I don't know exactly what, I know they've got 12 department heads. We have 5, right? So it's always there's never apples to apples comparison. I'm just using that as a comparison. I know that when we're not beating another city, that becomes a benchmark for us, right? So when we're higher than another city, we want to know why are we higher. I think it's also fair on the flip side that when we are beating other communities, we point it out, right? We're all in competition for the same talent. We're all in competition for the same folks to do this work, right? So that's my only point.
I got one thing.
Quit using Green Coast. I went through there the other day. Quit using Green Cove Springs as a sister city. We couldn't hold their jock strap right now. That place is boomed. You know,
We
we used
actually
to
have a-
always use them in that same,
We actually have a higher taxable value and more commercial than they do,
really, right?
mostly because of Argos.
Because when I went through there, maybe that's part of Clay County or something.
It's Argos.
Okay.
I mean, because of
Argos.
No, Commissioner, I want you to stay in the microphone, flip that metaphor around now.
Okay.
You just said we couldn't hold somebody, so now flip it around.
Well, that's true. Okay, I'm sorry.
I have looked into.
I just know it looks like it's grown. It's like part of Orange Park now.
I went to high school in Orange Park.
You know what I'm talking about.
I know what you're talking about. But
What is that road?
you're talking about the one that goes to like Fleming Island?
Yeah. Whatever. I'm like,
17.
I thought we were just in Green Cove, and boom, here.
It's a good point. You know, for example, if you look at High Springs is a lot more individual commercial than we do. Currently, well, pretty soon we'll outpace them. But because we have Argos, Quikrete, we do have higher taxable value in the city. So, last I checked, I want to say we were like $100 million higher than they were. Yeah. Mhm. In taxable value. Yeah. All right.
We'll take that out of the equation, then you got a different look.
Again, I know we're kind of going down rabbit holes here, but I don't want to belabor or miss this point, because I know right now we are having some community conversations about whether we want big boxes or we don't want big boxes, and we're kind of approaching it as an option, right? Like, hey, maybe this just isn't what we want. I'm not sure that we have the ability to approach that question as an option. I think we need to encourage commercial. If somebody wants to come, we need to figure out how to make that happen. And I hope our residents understand the financial pressure that we're under, but we're gonna need we need another Quikrete, right? We need more Publixes, we need more bigger stuff.
I mean, the thing is, Quikrete could close down tomorrow, and that would really destroy.
Please
So
knock
we
on
need
wood.
to have a backup plan here.
They've been bought out several times.
Yeah, I know.
It's all right, we
Yeah.
got Silverback coming right on.
All right, keep
Mr.
going.
Mayor, to that point, quick Google, Green Cove Springs 2025 taxable value was like 810 million. Ours was close to 870. All right, so that concludes the doom and gloom portion of my PowerPoint. Now we'll move into some options that the commission could consider should this happen. Obviously, the first one is raise your millage rate. Raise it back up to whatever is needed to recoup the lost funds. The first year if this goes into effect, your rollback rate is going to go sky high because your rollback rate is designed to capture the same amount of revenue as you were getting the year before. So the commission could adopt the rollback rate that year, which would be at the 250, 9.7 mils. That would. No, the commission would have to vote for that, but you have the ability to go to that automatically.
That's the money you would need at that 9.6.
That would generate the same amount of revenue we're generating today.
With just through millage, like there's no, where no
Yeah,
one is
everything else
arguing,
changed
no one is
to-
supporting that we're going to 9.7. We're just saying pure millage to millage, that's what it would take.
It's almost double because of what we're doing here.
That is correct. So I reran the numbers, the similar chart you saw before. If these go into effect, the 250 goes into effect, each mill would generate about $500,000. The effect on your average homeowner would be zero, because the average homeowner would be underneath the property tax exemption and not have to pay it. So you'd have a zero effect on homeowner, meaning the majority of the impact would go to your non-homesteaded properties. So running that same scenario as before, a current homestead property, again, pays about $1,500 in property taxes. If the 250 passes and you increase your millage rate to the rollback rate, they would pay $485 in property taxes. So still a net win to the resident from their $1,500 they're currently paying to the city. A non-homesteaded property, which is currently paying $1,750 under the rollback rate, would go to $2,900, which would be an increase of about $1,100. So really just a shift in where you're collecting those dollars from.
Dallas.
Yes, sir.
So I have already heard some arguments about, well, it's just going to shift over to commercial and the non-exempted properties. This millage is the way that actually could happen within those conversations. My head kind of starts going to the economics of if people are paying significantly less in their total mortgage because it includes property taxes, how much is that going to potentially drive up property prices? How much are home prices going to go up because people are thinking, oh, well, my mortgage was $2,500, now it's only $2,000. I can get a big, pay more for a house. So it's going to put upward pressure on home prices. But something like this also starts monkeying with the market with regards to what becomes rent being affordable. Well, I could just go buy a home now. So it's amazing when you start kind of looking at the secondary and tertiary effects of all of this stuff, where things could end up landing, because it could drive up home ownership because people can't afford to get out of the rental, or can't get or stay in a rental.
More revenue options. Obviously, one of the easiest tools you have in your belt is to raise your fire assessment. As the commission remembers, your last study you did said you could raise your fire assessment up to $419 dwelling unit. You're currently at $300. Increasing it to the $419 would generate another $500,000 in revenue to offset the loss from the property taxes. The next thing we've been looking at is increasing the current fees we have and implementing new city fees to cover the cost of services and cost of delivery. So that includes your recreation fees. We could think about implementing EMS charges, user fees, development fees, permitting fees, review fees, planning fees, franchise fees, business tax fees. Now, caveat to all of this is there's lots of rules and restrictions that go with all of these things. One of the ones we've been talking about internally is looking at our business tax, but Nicole can attest that there's like 75 pages of statute that says what you can and cannot do. It's not just, we need to make more money, let's raise our business tax. But we're looking at all the different fees and services we charge. There's a lot of services that the city currently provides to residents and people using our city services that are subsidized by your property taxes. So we would be looking at reducing the subsidy because it couldn't exist, and charging the full cost of service to the people requesting it. Planning department's a great example. Planning department is, no offense, Stacy, but it's subsidized by your general fund. But almost all of the planning department services are driven by somebody else. There's somebody coming in asking for planning services. So we would look at what that's actually costing us to provide and raise those fees.
Also, going back to the conversation with Representative Obrador, he was actually the chair of the committee that the governor set up for this whole property tax discussion. And where the previous discussions had to do with a set-aside fund that the governor could use to backstop losses, that was not in the new bill. So it's not there.
The trust fund was
It's
removed
not
from the
there.
bill.
It is not there.
Yeah, the governor's proposal to the legislature included a trust fund. My understanding is the legislature did not like that it was so loosey-goosey. It also did not include a funding mechanism for the trust fund, so they removed it from the bill. Doesn't mean they don't adopt something if this happens subsequently. And then another, obviously, area that you guys could look at is evaluate new property assessments, similar to your fire assessment. As I mentioned earlier, last year you gave the city staff direction to look into a road maintenance assessment. we've completed that study. We're ready to bring it forward to you. We'll be bringing that forward next couple of weeks. But the road maintenance assessment could raise $1.1 million annually to offset the cost of your road public works department. That would be at a full cost of $252 a dwelling unit, but that would put a big dent into closing the gap on the property taxes. But we'll be, like I said, bringing you the full presentation on that fairly soon. So in terms of budget reduction, I've been in my head thinking about it as like the 3 Ps. The only places you really have to cut your budget are programs, people, and projects. All of them affect your level of service and what you're providing your residents. Programs are things that we're doing. So it's recreation programs, that is our road maintenance programs, mowing the cemetery program, right-of-way programs, just all the kind of like operational things we do. As the manager mentioned earlier, an example could be instead of having a 2-week grading cycle, we now have a 6-week grading cycle because we just can't afford to maintain that level of service. People, obviously that's reducing staff positions either through layoffs or attrition or combination of the both. Again, direct impact to level of service because all of your employees come to work and provide service to your residents. So if you get rid of them, you're reducing your level of service there. And then the last one's projects. So that's special projects, capital projects that are in the budget. Certainly you could reduce some of the capital projects we do. What I would caution on that is property tax loss is a recurring loss of revenue where your projects are one-time expenditures. And we certainly fund some of your projects through property taxes, but from having a structurally sound budget, you want to match the loss of recurring revenue to reduction of recurring expenses. So projects is one of the last ones we'll look at, except for those projects that maybe aren't infrastructure-related projects. In my head, the dog park is a great example. We all love the dog park. We could probably pave a road for, well, they can't pave a road for a dog park, but prioritize those sorts of projects over, you know.
Definitely cannot pave a road for what we have.
We pave every road in the city if I could do it for a dog park.
I would, on this slide, you know, the project's 120 million slide, the capital outlay, that's the bulk of that is infrastructure projects. That's water towers, it's roads, it's wastewater treatment plant. The only thing that comes close to Commissioner Farnsworth's concern about a want versus need would be the gym, right? The things in Parks and Rec, but also remember that we in Newberry primarily fund those out of the wild spaces, public places, and you can't spend that money on a road anyway. So as long as you keep that separate bucket in your head mentally, there is no project that's up there that is not a need dependent on our growth, right? The second feed project, the water towers, the sewer lines, they're all infrastructure, right? Nobody's playing in them, you know?
And I think it's important to realize what the growth modeling is going to look like if the property tax goes away. The demand for property in Florida, whether there's a 5-year waiting period or not, is going to go up.
So, I give you all that information just so the commission is aware that we are preparing for this. We're not trying to, start doom and gloom and running around with our heads cut off, but we want to make sure that we are prepared. We're having thoughtful conversations, really looking at what could happen, what might happen, so that should this pass, we're not standing up here next year looking at you and saying, we don't know what to do. All the department heads have worked very hard to take deep looks at their budgets, make very hard decisions about what this could look like. So I will reiterate, there is no direct effect on the 2027 budget, the budget that we're currently working on, that our workshops will be on. It is generally going to proceed business as usual, unless the commission gives us direction that you want us, put money away to prepare for this, those sorts of things. But we're generally moving this year just the same as we always do, but making sure we have plans in place for what happens. So working to develop the what ifs, the options, the plans. Our goal again is to just be prepared if it passes, that we have a plan going forward. We'll know whether it passes November 3rd-ish. I mean, we'll know what the results of the election were. I guarantee you there's going to be a gajillion lawsuits that are filed, or are currently several lawsuits that are, I can't remember if they've actually been filed or if they're being prepared to be filed. This is going to be a very contentious legal battle statewide. Obviously, it affects a lot of places. So again, we'll know hopefully the night of November 3rd if it passed or not, and then we're going to proceed as if it's going to happen, and we'll watch the outcomes of any potential lawsuits. So that concludes that section. Is there any last questions on that? And I'll move to our next steps. I think Commissioner Clark has a question. Oh, sorry. Sorry. All right, so our next steps are going to be, you should adopt a budget for next year. As a reminder, you have to do that by September 30th. But we'll keep reminding you throughout this process that we need to be making sure that we're preparing for the future, looking at potential revenue losses. We'll continue to have the workshops throughout the summer. As I mentioned, our next one will be on utilities, followed by the governmental funds, and then a wrap-up towards the end of August. As I mentioned earlier, you will be adopting your caps on your millage and your fire assessment in July, with your final budget adoption in September. We asked the commission to consider what you want us to do should property tax reform occur, which of those revenue options looks palatable to you, or which of the areas you'd like us to look into in terms of cuts. Obviously, if it passes, we'll bring you much more detailed lists of the potential areas for reduction. We're going to continue to educate on the potential impacts. And then, as I mentioned, we're just going to ask you guys to provide your policy direction, as you always do, for how you'd like us to move forward. And that is all I got. Well, I've got this slide that shows you where we are in the process, but it's the same timeline I've shown you for 17 years. So we're in the summer workshops portion.
All right, citizen comments? City manager. Oh, come on down.
Before Mr. Norman starts speaking, we need to think about the sheriff contract. That's a big code. But I know that fire assessment. So that's internal. Anyway.
I just had a question on if they do the tax exempt, it won't affect this budget that you're working on now, right? It'll be the following year.
Correct.
So one thing to keep in mind, let's don't be afraid of what's happening down the road. Don't be adding a bunch of extra stuff in it. And I think on your general fund, the property tax is 15% of it. So, I mean, most of your big budgets is fees and stuff. Just some things to keep in mind on this deal, just like Mark said about the water fees. That staggered water fee is what's making everybody put the wells in. I know I can put a new yard in a new house, water it really hard, my bill will be $600 for the month. And you talk about the Swanee River is your water permit, what are they gonna do, cut your wells off? No. I mean, you know what I mean? They're not gonna cut the damn things off. I mean, just something to think about, And like you said, I think go back to your true budget. Your job, to me, you got a tough job, but you don't have to worry about making revenue. You just got to worry about spending it. We went over a homeowner association just the other day, and the first thing the comptroller, he said, we need to raise the fees. I said, no, we need to cut expenses. We're going to keep the fees the same. We're going to cut the expenses. And like you said, one of the big things I think you could do, your heads of your staffs are really good. And, government always said, well, if you don't spend enough money, you don't get your money back next year. If you went to your heads of staff and said, hey, look at your budget. What was it last year? Just say it's $100. See if you can make the cuts. And let's see what you could do it for. If they did it for $80, give them 15, 20% of the $20 they saved, and give it in bonuses to the employees in that department. You know what I mean? Maybe we don't need that new truck. You know what I mean? And I think instead of, the state, if they didn't spend all their money, I've been in a bunch of them things, if they didn't spend all the money by December, well, they didn't get funded as much next year. But if you went back to your head of your department and say, hey, Rance, you think you could save? He said, man, I really think we could save something here. And then you cut them 20%, and instead of them employees feeling like they're getting more, they're going to have to maybe do a little bit more, but maybe they get 20% of the savings as a bonus spread across percentage-wise to the employees in that thing. Just something to think about, you know what I mean? And I think it'd give an incentive, we're all incentivized. And then, you know, and a lot of your capital spending, I know Jordan trying to get y'all souped up on this capital, but a lot of that's already, that spending is coming in. And just like you said, if you do get a $2 million cut 2 years from now, with the new homes and everything, the commercial coming in, you ain't gonna feel it, I don't think. I mean, you know, you will some, but you're gonna offset that. You know, you're talking about your school board, one of the things you want to rebuild with these taxes. Tim come to me, I think in 2019, we were talking about the school board budget, and I said, he said, man, we need to help the school board. I said, how's a poor boy like me gonna help it? And I said, that budget's like $370 million. Tim said, really? And I was looking it up on my phone. I said, no, it was $420 million. Well, you know what it was this past year?
603.
Yeah, and it's gone up just stupid amounts. So, you know, I think, you know, one of the things we need to keep, and you know, just like the fire fee. Now, this is a taxpayer talking. And, you know, my fire fees, I fought all year because the county or the city, I don't know who it was, can't count the dang apartments. So they charged me $300, you know, and Jordan and all the city staff helped me, and I think it was more the thing. But then I'm in Countryway, and I see a F-250, 4-door, lights all over it. And, you know, I can see if it's a fire truck, but come on now, do we really need that? And, you know, all I see is brand new pickup trucks for every city staff. You know, I mean, you know, I got guys that go Trenton, I got guys that go Gainesville, everywhere else. And I ain't saying you do it, but, you know, we buy them $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 trucks with good air conditions, 120,000 miles. I don't know. You know what I mean? And I kind of think if it was y'all's money, you know, I see a lot of y'all driving used trucks. I don't see a whole bunch of riding new ones, but we got brand new ones to stay inside the city limits. And if you broke down in a used truck, you got a city cell phone to call somebody to come get you. Ain't like you're gonna be walking. You know, so I mean, but you know, some of us seeing some of that stuff, it kind of rubs us the wrong way, you know? And then like you said, the wild spaces and all, that money to build parks and stuff, I'd really be cautious, you know, like you said, improve the parks you got. Because when somebody gives you free money and you spend $1 million on something, then you got the maintenance expense of it. And that never goes away. You know what I mean? And don't get me wrong, you need some of that stuff. But just some of the things to think about, and I know y'all are going through the process, but, you know, just trying to throw a little different light on some of the deal, you know. And like you said, you know, the staff souping you up, say, hey, we're going to get all these cuts and all. Well, you may get them, you may not. But let's don't budget this year on what you may get. And I definitely think it's going to pass. You know what I mean? I definitely think it's going to pass. But was I wrong on that? Is it about 15% of the budget? You know, what? Property taxes for the city budget, ain't it about $15 or $22?
$2 million cut is 15%.
Yeah.
Property taxes as a whole are 33%.
3% is your budget? Yeah. So, and you know, and like you said, you know, I know we're paying a fortune for building permits now. New building permits, $23,000. And you know, so a lot of that, I know a lot of that's going to these sewer plants and different things, but I don't know, you know, at some point, you know, it's a deal. But just things for you guys to keep in mind. Y'all got a tough job and all, but just keep some of those things in mind. Thank you.
All right, city manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I really don't have any comment except to just correct. I've heard this thing about everybody's driving around in a new city truck. Last year, there was only one new vehicle in the city of Newberry. Over 50% of the vehicles in Newberry's fleet right now are 10 years plus. So I know that the folks that interact with developers and businesses most, generally too, Tim, but when you look at the actual facts, the facts dispel that narrative fairly quickly. And you know, we've got people driving around in 1990s pickup trucks and all that kind of stuff too, but we are on a rotation. So there is always something new coming in and then there's something old rolling off. But more than 50% of our vehicles are over a decade old, you know, so just making sure that we have the facts that are out there. I get the point. But when people say, right, every city of Newberry has a brand new truck, that's just not factually the case. All right, that's it for me.
Madam Attorney? Madam Attorney, when was the last time you had a comment? You sit down there, come on, come up with something.
Just waiting to get her in a one-on-one
Say something
meeting.
about America's 250th. Come on.
I have many comments that I make to staff, and my participation isn't really needed in public meetings.
Come on, Madam Clerk. Commissioner Coleman?
The truth about a city's aspirations isn't found in its vision. It's found in its budget, and I love that quote. Thank you.
Commissioner Clark?
Nothing on this, just, same thing. We got, a beautiful country here. And, some of the things that are going on, but, God bless our country, our troops, and, we're almost at the 250th mark. And I hope we can keep it another 250th, but we're gonna have to do it without the Muslims, so, just to let you know.
Commissioner Farnsworth? I agree with Commissioner Clark. Commissioner Long?
Nothing much. Just congratulations on the Father Fest event we had. It was a great turnout. A lot of people. We're gonna definitely move the day out of summertime because boy, it was hot. It was blazing out there. So it's probably gonna be something towards the fall. But we had a great turnout and a lot of people came. So.
Commissioner Maison? Good. Okay. So obviously reiterating, we got fireworks on Friday over at Countryway Town Square. All the festivities, so to speak, are going to start at 6 o'clock. We got the Jamie Davis Band, several vendors that are going to be over there. Fireworks will be right at 9:30. They will last about 20 minutes. So if you got a pet or a issue with blasts, at least you know when they're going to go off and how long they're going to last. And on the 4th, of course, we have the parade, and that starts at 9 a.m. Sharp. We are thankful for having our NHS graduate Super Bowler, Corey Durden, who is going to be Grand Marshal. So he'll be first in the parade and get that kicked off. I think our last count, we had over 50 entries, and some of those entries are multiples. So we have one gentleman, I think his name is Elliot or Eli. He has a roofing company, and he has communicated to us that he has $6,000 worth of stuff he is giving away off of his float on Saturday. Between candy and all this other stuff, I mean, he is going all. He's going all out. Some people are really embracing this. I think it's fantastic. I am hopeful that some of the demand on some of this stuff starts going down, and some of those prices actually start coming down. Also, there's a good possibility that some of the city entities could go away, and there goes a customer for those, theoretically, for some of those parts, at least in the short run, until somebody else picks up those infrastructure and those things. We do have Florida Governor candidate Bobby Williams coming. He'll be at the Municipal Building at 4 p.m. on Monday. So if you're interested in hearing from another governor candidate, they'll be at the Municipal Building at 4 o'clock. We have a hard stop, I think, at 5:30 because he's got to be over in Dixie County later that night. So that's a big heads up. And I think my overall theme here, as we're kind of enter into these discussions, is this is just another challenge. It's just a new challenge, and for our pace and our personality and how we do with these things is we just really kind of embrace them as a city body and as a city. And for whatever reason, I think it's just in our DNA at this point that these are just opportunities that we tend to rise to the occasion and make the best out of them. And I certainly have confidence that we'll do that again. With that, we are adjourned.
Is that the 6th?